Hello and welcome to Friday Live. I am your host, Strata lawyer Amanda Farmer. We're going out live today to the Your Strata Property Facebook page, out to LinkedIn, out to YouTube. Hello, hello. How has your week in Strata been? We are here for our first long Friday Live in a little while. I have been traveling various parts of the world the last few weeks, and I've dropped in here a few times on a Friday afternoon to say hello and answer a strata question or two. But until now, haven't had the chance to sit down and have good old catch up with you. Spend a bit more time on a Friday. We call that Friday Live when I'm here for around about an hour I set aside to wrap up the week in Strata, to have a look at what we've all been talking about, to visit the podcast for this week, to have a look at the media, to let you know if there are any interesting developments in our Strata world, maybe some new cases to share with you that you might not otherwise know about. That's what Friday Live is all about. And it is always wonderful to have you here with me, whether you're coming in live. It is around about 4 o'clock. We're in daylight savings time now on the east coast of Australia. 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. If you're coming in live, give me a hello here in the comments, wherever you're coming through from, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. I can see those comments. If you are catching the replay of these chats stays on the page. You can catch up another time if you're not with us here live on a Friday. Drop me a hello. I always see those comments come through, even if you're catching the replay. I can see Kristen here already. She is coming to us from LinkedIn, and Kristen is saying, here we go. Indeed, here we do go, Kristen. Thank you for joining us here today. Petra is here. Nice to see you, Petra. Good afternoon to you too. Emiliana, great to have you here with us today. Welcome back to me. Thank you, Emiliana. Thank you to all of you who continued to show up on a Friday while I was away, tuning in. We had a great group. I think pretty much 3 out of the 4 Fridays I was away, I was able to still drop in and say hi and give you a bit of strata knowledge. And I said, I'm here because you're here, because you tell me that this is helpful, because you look forward to these catch-ups. So do I. So wonderful to see those familiar names coming on in. Hey, Peter, saying hi and welcome back. It's great to be back. It is that time in the afternoon. I got back into Sydney on Monday, got back here to my country home on Tuesday, and so a few days into the time zone. Yes, still suffering from a bit of jet lag. It's that time in the afternoon where you sort of start to go, I think it's bedtime. I hear from others around me, the older people in my life around me, saying, Amanda, jet lag gets worse with age. You're getting getting older now, and it's not as easy to get past the jet lag as you get older. And I have to say, yeah, I'm feeling it. I wake up every morning thinking, I feel great. I'm past it now. Get to the afternoon, and it's sort of a bit. So working hard to keep the brain switched on here. Apologies if there's any if I misspeak. It's not me. That's the jet lag. Daryl is saying, thank you to the Neighbourhood Association not bothering to show up and allowing me to catch Amanda live. Did you have a meeting with a Neighbourhood Association, Daryl, online? No one showed up. That's a bit sad, but it's great that you get to be here with us. Bill and Ben is here saying, NCAT case, the good stuff. Yes, if you received my email this afternoon giving you a heads up on what's happening here on live, I do have brand new, freshly published NCAT decision to share with you, and it involves someone who is regularly here on live supporting us, a member of our community, someone who's here contributing. I have her permission to share her case with you here today. So we are definitely getting stuck into that today. Good afternoon, Henry. Great to have you here with us. Margaret is here saying, hi, Amanda. Welcome home. Margaret, thank you very much, Margaret, for joining us here today. Diane is giving me a wave. Hey, Diane. Peter is here saying, how are you? I'm good. I'm awake. Awake and getting energized. All right. Excellent. Lots of you. Wow, I just had a look at those numbers. Lots of you here and excited for today's chat. Good stuff. All good stuff. Now, I want to say a special thank you, a special public thank you to my team, the YSP team, Dream Team, who supported me, kept the show on the road, kept the office running while I was away. Michelle, Rochelle, and Mina. I posted a little pic of them here on the page earlier this week. So many of you speak to them on the phone, communicate with them by email. You know, Rochelle and Mina are keeping things running on the membership side in the background, often supporting our members. So we'll look into our team meeting this week. Thank you very much to the team. They're not the only ones. We have web developers and podcast editors and video editors. Special hello and thank you to Francis, our video editor, who I know tunes in as well, all helping us out here on Team YSP. So couldn't do any of this without you all. Jan is here saying welcome back. Hey, Jan, how you going? All right, this week's podcast episode, if you haven't caught it yet, I'm having a whip back around to cases. It's all about the cases the last few weeks. I opened this week's podcast episode by referring back to that very interesting defamation case that I spoke about a couple of weeks ago. Strata manager having to pay out $35,000 to a committee member who the District Court of New South Wales found had been defamed in not just one, but 3 emails that Strata manager sent. That podcast episode where I unpacked that case was super, super popular. I heard from many of you. There's a number of comments under that episode with your feedback. And we're talking about it. We've been talking about it in our member forum, and members asking the question, hey, Amanda, can we have more of this? Can we have more where you teach us about strata law principles by referring to published cases? We find this really, really helpful, hearing these stories. It's a way that we as human beings learn, a way that we understand, hearing stories of others going through similar situations. And so I took that to heart. If my members say, this is what we like, this is what we want, then that's what I'm going to deliver for you. So this week's podcast episode, I look at a few more cases and direct you to some past podcast chats where I've talked about cases, and I've produced a member resource for the members inside our online community, a spreadsheet of so far as I can tell, so far as I can remember, according to my records, all the Friday live chats, all the podcast episodes where I have featured a case, and I have spoken about the principles that come out of that case and the learnings that we have coming out of those cases. So I've put all those into a spreadsheet that our members can now access. And I do recommend that anytime you're facing a challenge in your strata community, maybe you've got a lot owner who's decided to file an NCAT application, or you're wondering whether you as an owner's corporation might have a case and may need to travel the NCAT path to solve a challenge, head on over and check out that spreadsheet. It is described by topic area. We talk about smoking. We feature pets, enforcement costs, bylaws, challenges to different types of bylaws if the tribunal has considered those issues. And if I've talked about a case on that point, you'll find it there in the spreadsheet, and that spreadsheet will be kept up to date for our members. So today, for example, I'm talking about a specific NCAT case. I'm going to share that with you. I am going to share a copy of that case with you, and we're going to pop it over in that members only spreadsheet so that it is there ready to roll should any members face a similar challenge when it comes to a bylaw, an absolution bylaw we're talking about today. They can head over to that ready reference in the spreadsheet and access this case. I've had a couple of members reach out to me and say, Amanda, I always know I have a vague recollection of when you talk about cases, and I think, oh, Amanda spoke about something like that. Where was it? What was that case? Spreadsheet is now there to help you out. So members, you will have the link to that spreadsheet in your inboxes from this week's member email. So that's what I'm talking about on today's podcast episode. Yes, I am today going to feature a member win, a client win, a win by one of our viewers who I think is here today, is regularly here. We're absolutely going to get to that. Before I do, I want to check in with you about an article that appeared in the Sydney Morning Herald last Sunday I think it was, authored by Sue Williams, who is often writing for the Domain about strata issues. We've got a link to the article, which is going to pop into our comments here. And I will just share with you my screen. And here we have a copy of it. The title, the heading, the headline, I think we call it in Newspeak. This law was meant to solve Sydney's housing crisis. It's left owners devastated. What law are we talking about? Well, Sue is talking about the New South Wales law when it comes to the collective sale of a strata building, collective sale or redevelopment of a strata building. This is the law that commenced in 2016 with the new Part 10 in our Strata Schemes Development Act, allowing the collective sale or redevelopment of a building with only 75% of owners voting in favour. And Sue is writing in light of a research paper that has been published by Professor Hazel Easthope, who is the Deputy Director of the University of New South Wales City Futures Research Centre. The research paper is titled Redeveloping the Compact City, the Challenges of Strata Collective Sales. If you're interested in finding out what those challenges have been, definitely have a look at Sue's article because she summarizes some of them there, and head over and read Hazel and her team's research paper. We've got a link to that one popping into the comments as well. In short, what's happening? These attempts at a collective sale, a sale of all units all in one line to a developer pursuant to Part 10 of the legislation are falling over. They're falling over. And what's happening is owners essentially are putting their lives on hold, they say, for years, for many years. The case study featured in Sue's article here relates to a Macquarie Park building where plans were all full steam ahead for this sale. And for the reasons that Sue sets out in the article, the sale was not able to go ahead. And owners spent a lot of money on lawyers, a lot of money on consultants. They're saying now that the sale's not going ahead. They're left to repair their aging building, and they've run out of money to do that because they thought they were headed in this direction of collective sale. Sue had a chat with me before she published this article to get my comments on the situation, and you'll see towards the end of the article that she features my quote here. I said that the laws have been an almost complete failure. What the reforms did, in my view, was actually arm some unscrupulous developers with a tool to threaten holdout owners and achieve 100%, rather than 75%, achieve 100% more easily. Because developers have always been able to purchase all units in a building and then to do what they like with that building, to knock it down, to refurb it, whatever they want to do. If 100% of owners want to sell, you don't need to follow any legal process. You don't need to go to court and get any approval. That's certainly the easier way and can turn out to be the cheaper way for a developer to do these things. Now, I have been hearing from, I was originally saying a handful of owners. I think I might be up to 2 handfuls now, just in the last 6 months. Owners coming to me and saying, Amanda, we've had a developer come in, has bought up more than 25%, sometimes more than 50% of units in the building, and is threatening us to sell to them. Is saying, if you don't sign this contract, if you don't enter this option deed, then levies are going to go through the roof. Here's a report from a contractor who says you need $5 million worth of work done. This is all coming as a surprise to me. These developers are establishing controlling interests in these buildings, and owners are feeling that they have no choice but to sell. And what I spoke to Sue about was that, in my view, these are developers trying to avoid that Part 10 process, trying to avoid having to jump through the hoops that the legislation does require developers to jump through, and instead to just get all owners to sign up and agree to a sale rather than just the minimum 75% to take them through the court process, because the court process is too complex, it's too lengthy, it's too involved, it's too risky. It could all fall through. We have only had one collective sale approved by our Land and Environment Court in the 6 years since this legislation commenced. And as I said to Sue, I don't know what we think is going to change about that if we don't otherwise have a second look at that legislation. So even since talking to Sue, one of the members, I think, in our forum posted about a situation that they are in where they feel they have one of these unscrupulous developers making demands and making threats, and they just don't know what to do, whether they should sell, whether they should hold out for the Part 10 process. It becomes very challenging, very confusing for owners. Just heading over to those comments, I can see Jan saying, our building has fallen victim to an unscrupulous supposed developer who has scared all the owners into a fire sale. He told the owners there was $17 million of repairs. Not true. But he successfully scared them. Yeah, that's exactly the practice that I spoke to Sue about, Jan, and that I'm seeing. You're not the only one. I certainly have a number of owners contacting me about that. So I know Karen Stiles at the Owners Corporation Network, who's also quoted in this article, is also hearing from her members, from owners about these practices. So I think what we need to do is to keep talking about them, keep highlighting that this is what's happening. And I think Sue, Hazel Easthope, Professor Hazel Easthope and her team are doing what they can to bring these concerns to our lawmakers. Cheryl is here saying hello. How are you doing, Cheryl? I'm just scrolling back to those hellos. And a comment here from Diane saying, would love case law where a bylaw such as exclusive use is currently ambiguous and may be invalid versus seen as invalid to enforce unauthorized defective works. Motion to revise bylaws queried as out of order to take to NCAT. All right. I'll come back to that one, Diane. If I have a case for you, I'll see if I can dig one out that fits into that category. What I can say for now is that I do have a case about absolution bylaws. This is what I spoke about in my email, inviting you all here to live today. I have a feeling that's what lots of you are here to learn about. So let's get into it. The person who has been successful in obtaining a tribunal order declaring one of her building's bylaws invalid is Emiliana. Now, Emiliana, I said hello to earlier today. If you're still here, Emiliana, give me a hey or a wave here in the comments. Emiliana has given me permission to identify her today, to say that she is a client of mine, to say that she is a member of the Your Strata Property online membership community. She is a regular viewer here on live. And I know that for some time, she has been very concerned about this particular bylaw that has been registered by her owners corporation. It's been in place for some time. I will take you over and have a look at it. I have shown it to you before. I didn't tell you at that time which building it was for or that it related to Emiliana. But back in August, I think it was, I was talking about these absolution bylaws here on live and saying, I'm seeing more and more of these things crop up and they're coming across my desk. What is an absolution bylaw? It's a bylaw that owners corporations have drafted that says they don't have to repair and maintain certain parts of the common property. Why? Because they don't think they should, they don't feel like it, they don't want to pay for it. They are attempting to pass a bylaw relieving themselves, absolving themselves of having to repair and maintain certain parts of the common property. And I raised it back in August because it wasn't just Emiliana who I was helping at that time. 2 or 3 other owners, members in my community were asking the question, Amanda, are these things legal? How did this bylaw get registered? I thought if an owners corporation was going to shift responsibility for common property over to a lot owner, there were some processes to be followed, which include getting the written consent of the owners to take on responsibility for the common property. So I talked about it in that live chat back in August. If you can't remember that one, doesn't sound familiar, you want to go over and check it out. As I said earlier, we have the replays of our Friday Lives available here on Facebook. They're also on YouTube. If you want to dig through my LinkedIn, you'll find them as well. The team has the link to this August chat that I am referring to. They're going to post it here in the comments for you if you want to go and have a revisit. Emiliana's given me a hey, so she is here today. Thank you for joining us, Emiliana, and congratulations once again. What I'm going to do first up, before I take you over to the case, and I've got a link for you to download those reasons. I know there's a few of you here who like to read those otherwise unpublished. Maybe it'll get published reported is the correct word. Maybe it'll get reported and you'll be able to read it on Case Law New South Wales or on Austlii. Maybe it won't, because not all NCAT decisions get reported. But where I am given a copy of a decision and I think it's important, then I'm happy to upload that to my website and to share those here with you, which is what we've done with Emiliana's case. I'm going to take you over, before I share the actual case, I'm going to take you over and just remind you what the bylaw looked like. So you can have a think about whether, if you're a manager, you have these kinds of bylaws in place in buildings that you're managing. If you're an owner who's concerned about an absolution bylaw, whether you might have one of these in place in similar terms. As I said, I showed you this back in August. At that time, I redacted that strata plan number. I'm not doing that today because this is now a published decision and public decision. Special bylaw number 4 in Emiliana's building, absolution of maintenance for lot owners' fixtures. So this is a bylaw that the owners' corporation be absolved from its maintenance responsibilities for certain fixtures, fittings, and appliances that are located within the lot in the following form. The bylaw is drafted from the Common Property or Land and Property Information Memorandum. I'm highlighting these parts of the bylaw because they come up in the decision. So the senior member who considered this case actually went through each of these clauses, and you'll see in the decision talks about why the clauses are a bit odd, why he thinks that they are invalid, and why the bylaw ultimately as a whole is invalid. So the intent of the bylaw, as you can read here, is to provide a definition of maintenance responsibilities and appliances that service a single lot within the strata scheme. You can read through further here what is included in these, what items of property are included in the bylaw and that are said to be the responsibility of lot owners. And it's a bit of a muddle. It's a bit of a mix of lot property and common property. As you can see here, taps and internal pipe work, oven stoves, cooktops, sinks and incinerators. Yeah, some of that will be lot property. Other things here might be common property, cornices, skirting boards, architraves, wall tiles, floor tiles, mezzanines, all paintwork and wallpaper, floor coverings within the lot, tiles, pavers, decking. So there's no real differentiation between lot property and common property, but this bylaw is saying all of it is going to be the responsibility of the lot owners. Now, these absolution bylaws are all drafted in different ways. Some are a little shorter than others, some are a little clearer than others, but in the case of this bylaw, the tribunal did not like it, And I will share with you copy of that decision now. I'm just heading over for a couple of comments here. Bill and Ben saying that draft has brief bracket lawyer written all over it. Who drafted it? It's interesting that you say that, Bill and Ben, because I did the same thing, went back and looked at it a second time, and I'm not sure that you think it was drafted by a lawyer. I'm not sure. It's odd. It's really odd, especially in the way that it refers to the New South Wales Land and Property Information Memorandum, November 2011, now called the Common Property Memorandum. I don't know that it is all that lawyerly. The tribunal doesn't make any comment on that. Fair enough. Here is the decision. I'll click over and bring it up for you. I'll head back up. I'm just halfway through it there, but I'll head back up. Sorry for making you all a bit seasick. So the case is, Emiliana, I'm going to butcher your name here. I should have checked this. Stanislao and the owners of Strata Plan 32469. So decision came out just this week, just a few days ago. Emiliana sent it over to me. The order from the senior member was that Special Bylaw 4, made in 2017, is invalid, with this order to operate on and from the 9th of August 2017. So it's invalid. It has always been invalid. That is the way these orders generally work. Diane is asking, will we be able to see a copy of the bylaw as well as the NCAT decision? Interestingly, the bylaw is not reproduced. It's a bit long, as you can see, not reproduced in the NCAT decision. I'll have a chat, Diane, about whether Emiliana is comfortable for me to share that registered bylaw with you. It's otherwise publicly accessible, but if we're going to be sharing that, I'll just check with Emiliana that she's okay with that. This decision, we have a link for you. I'm not sure if it's gone into the comments yet, but the team can pop that in. I know a number of you will be keen to have a closer look at this. This case had two components to it. One was the challenge to the bylaw, and the other component related to an order for the repair of lot property damage due to a failure in the common property. What I'm going to address today is that part of the decision only that deals with the bylaw. That's the part that I was involved in assisting Emiliana with some written submissions for that part of the decision. Do read through the first half of the decision, which refers to the other issue about maintenance. That's really important and will give you as owners some guidance on what you do really need to focus on when you are heading to the tribunal and seeking orders for the repair and maintenance of common property or the rectification of lot property that has been damaged due to a failure to repair and maintain the common property. So do have a look at the whole thing, but I'm going to skip down now to paragraph 59, I think is where we start to talk about this absolution bylaw. Now, I've said to you that Emiliana is a client of mine, that I was involved in assisting her with some written submissions on this particular point about this bylaw. If you tuned in to my webinar that I ran just before I headed off overseas, the Strategic Strata Litigator, I talked about the option of engaging strata lawyers on what I call limited scope retainers. So you might not engage a strata lawyer to help you with your entire NCAT proceeding from start to finish, to appear for you, to put together all your evidence, to argue your case before the tribunal. You might only engage a strata lawyer to write some written submissions for you, or give you an advice on prospects, or help to fill in your application. And that's indeed the approach that Emiliana took when she engaged me. She said, Amanda, I know this issue with the bylaw is a strictly legal issue. I want to challenge the bylaw. I don't really know what sections of the Act I need to refer to, what the relevant case law is. Can you please draft up a submission for me that I can then lodge with the tribunal? And that will be my legal arguments. And that's what I will ask the tribunal to have a look at. That is what we did. Emiliana engaged me on a limited scope retainer, excuse me, just to do her submissions on the bylaw point. And I imagine Emiliana lodged those submissions with the tribunal, and from what I can read here in the decision, those submissions have been accepted. So I just wanted to share that strategy with you. Emiliana is a strategic strata litigator and has had success in applying that strategy. I can see Emiliana saying, that's fine with me to share that bylaw for all to learn how we were deceived by this. Yeah, I'll be interested to hear what your fellow owners' response has been to this decision, or will be. I know it's very fresh, will be to this decision, Emiliana. So scrolling down, if you are going to read this for the purpose of looking at the bylaw point, that all starts at paragraph 59. Section 150 is the section under which you make your application. On the application of a person entitled to vote on the motion to make a bylaw, which includes the owner, the tribunal can make an order declaring a bylaw is invalid if the tribunal considers that an owner's corporation did not have the power to make the bylaw, or that the bylaw is harsh, unconscionable, or oppressive. The tribunal then goes on to have a look at what does harsh, unconscionable, or oppressive mean. That was established by our Court of Appeal in the Cooper case. That was a case about pets. I won't get into there what the judges on the Court of Appeal said in that case. But we've got a nice little summary here from the Liu case, where the appeal panel has now said that The Cooper stands for the proposition that regulation of conduct by persons living in proximity to us in a strata scheme will involve an evaluative judgment. And the fact that a bylaw may be administratively convenient for an owner's corporation cannot justify interference with the ordinary rights of lot owners by means of the bylaw. Now, that's really important in this case, and in the case of absolution bylaws, we're calling them generally, where an owner's corporation is saying it's convenient for us to just shift this responsibility off to lot owners. We don't want to deal with all these little things. Some of them are lot property anyway, some of them are common property. We just want to draw a line and say all of this stuff is the responsibility of lot owners. That's really convenient for us. And here we've had the Court of Appeal say, we have the Tribunal saying on a number of occasions now that administrative convenience is not a reason to put in place a bylaw if that bylaw is otherwise interfering with the ordinary rights of lot owners. So if you want a good summary of what harsh, unconscionable, or oppressive means, there's one here for you in Emiliana's case, paragraph 65. The Tribunal goes on to have a look at the case of Mullins, and this is important. This was something that I highlighted in my submissions that Amelia relied on, and this is the case I talked about back in August when I was explaining that, in my view, I did not believe an owner's corporation could just pass a bylaw that shifts responsibility to lot owners. There was a second step in that process, and the second step is that the owner's corporation also needs to pass and make a common property rights bylaw that then gives owners the responsibility to repair and maintain the common property. How do you make a valid common property rights bylaw? You get the written consent of owners who are taking on responsibility under that bylaw. So that's not new. I didn't just make that up, say that sounds like a smart idea. That's what was said in the Mullins case back in 2015. And the Tribunal has also looked at that case, perhaps prompted by my submissions, and said, yes, in the Mullins case, that case was decided under our 1996 Act. It was established that the power to make a lot owner responsible for maintenance, repair, renewal, and replacement of common property exercised by special resolution under Section 103. You can't do that unless the common property has been made the subject of an exclusive use, now common property rights bylaw, which empowers the placement of such obligations on the relevant lot owner, but requires the lot owner's consent. So that's where the Tribunal has started. Special Bylaw 4 in Emiliana's building was made without the written consent of all lot owners, and that's part of the reason, only part of the reason, why the bylaw has been found to be invalid. So the Tribunal makes that finding. The Tribunal also goes on to say that Part 3 of the Special Bylaw applied a list of items, I quickly showed you those items earlier, that did not seek to distinguish which of those items were common property and which were lot property. The list contains items that were clearly common property without any special definitions, items that were clearly lot property without any special definitions, and there was no material provided to assist in defining those items. There was a copy of a registered strata plan, but that was illegible in significant parts. So the Tribunal goes on essentially to say that the bylaw was so uncertain as to be unenforceable. And that's another reason why the bylaw should not stand and should be declared to be invalid. It talks about this heading, introduction and intent. At all times, the owner's corporation shall retain maintenance responsibility for structural elements, integrity and safety of the building. That is not a determination under the legislation that we should not repair and maintain parts of the common property. That's what you're required to do if you're going to absolve yourself as an owner's corporation of repair and maintain common property. You have to pass a special resolution. There is elemental uncertainty as to what remained the responsibility of the owner's corporation. Waterproofing, drainage connections to the common stack, wiring, electrical, whether or not those items serviced only one lot. There was uncertainty created by further clauses. There were items that were still to be covered by insurance. We see that often in these absolution bylaws, that notwithstanding we're absolved, if the insurance policy responds, then we'll still be covered. The tribunal has found in this case that that creates uncertainty in the terms of the bylaw. There is reference to, here is the reference to the Land and Property Information Memorandum, which is how the bylaw refers to it, and says that it's essentially unclear how all of that interacts. So a few more paragraphs there for you to read through, which I won't drag you through. But essentially, the bylaw didn't meet the requirements for a common property rights bylaw, which was needed to be able to shift that responsibility over to lot owners. And the terms of the bylaw were so uncertain as to be unenforceable. And for those reasons, the bylaw is invalid, and that order was to operate back dated to the 9th of August 2017. Now, that can raise all kinds of issues. If the bylaw was always invalid and owners have, in the meantime, since that date, taken on responsibility for dealing with common property, which they otherwise did not need to, there may be some claims that might be arising from owners for compensation where they have paid out money to deal with common property that they didn't otherwise have to. That's the danger of having these types of uncertain bylaws and these types of obligations placed on owners to improperly placed on owners. There's a question there about costs, whether there will be costs ordered in these proceedings as well, which is something that Emiliana will be thinking about, no doubt, and that the Owners Corporation will need to have a think about. That is where you can end up. That is where you can end up with. And interestingly, I'm going back to Bill and Ben's comment, was this drafted by a lawyer? And interestingly, drafted by law. Heading back to the comments that we have here, looking at our Facebook stream here, I think I've answered Diane, a copy of the bylaw. Emiliana said that's fine. Peter's saying the submission would be most interesting. Noted. Noted there, Peter. Solicitor client material there. Bill and Ben is saying, I love the reference to Cooper, as so many people think it only relates to blanket pet bans. Not so. Yes, very, very good point there, Bill and Ben. When Cooper first came out, we talked about it a bit here on live and on the podcast. And I kept saying over and over again, this is not just a case about pets. This is an incredibly important case. Any case generally coming out of our highest court in New South Wales, our Court of Appeal, dealing with Strata is going to be a very important case. The principles that were established by that case is what's important. It was obviously very important for Joe Cooper and for Angus to make sure that Angus could stay in the Horizon building. But for the rest of us, a really important case for bylaw interpretation. What is it that makes a bylaw harsh, unconscionable, or oppressive? And Cooper is rolled out all the time, I can tell you, in our New South Wales Tribunal, included in a lot of submissions that I write, that barristers who are assisting me and my clients write. And we're starting to see the distillation, I'm going to call it distillation, of the Cooper principles come through in these later cases, and that's a nice one that is here in this decision. Patricia is saying, very interesting. Henry is saying, from a building perspective, the definitions are critical. If the tiles are lot property, where does common property start? The membrane or the slab? How far into the common wall cavity do you need to go to reach common property? The drafter of the bylaw has no building knowledge whatsoever. Yeah, exactly the point that's been raised. Noted, found by the tribunal, Henry, is that this was just so uncertain, so unclear. It's not just these absolution bylaws that I see a lack of clarity in bylaw drafting. Sometimes common property rights bylaws where an owner is being given the exclusive use of an area of common property, so a parking space or a back courtyard. Those are also bylaws where uncertainty can invalidate the bylaw. So where that area is not properly defined, we don't know the dimensions of the area. How big is it? Where does it end? Does the owner have responsibility for the slab, or is it just what's within that airspace? How far do the owner's maintenance responsibilities extend? There have been, we do have examples in our case law of common property rights bylaws that have been found to be invalid because the area within the exclusive use is not clearly defined. So when I'm working with clients, when I'm working with owners corporations, sometimes developers as well, who are wanting to draft these kinds of bylaws, I'm very careful to say this is a situation where we have to be really, really specific about our definition of this area, get a surveyor out there to draw up a plan, proper dimensions, and be very clear about where a lot owner's responsibility begins and ends within that exclusive use area. Susan is saying, I thought all structural walls in each lot were common property, and from the point inwards was lot property. Yes, maybe. Maybe, Susan, it's not necessarily as straightforward as that. There may be internal walls that are lot property, structural or otherwise. Boundary walls is usually what we talk about when we're talking about where common property ends and lot property begins. And your boundary walls are going to be shown on your strata plan in thick black lines. And that's where our starting point is for looking at which walls are common property. And you're right that the definition in our legislation as to where that common property ends and the lot property begins is that inner surface. That inner surface of the wall is where your lot property begins, and anything under the inner surface is where the common property is. Speaking very generally, you must look at your strata plan and must look at your bylaws to see where that changes. And indeed, speaking from the position of a New South Wales practitioner, recognizing that our laws are different in our different states. Peter's saying, seems that if it went to court, then you would think that equity may step in with regards to unconscionable conduct, etc. Yeah. So this is sort of our strata legislation trying to draw in those concepts of what is just and equitable. Certainly our strata cases are all considered, and indeed our legislation says must be considered in the first instance in the tribunal, unless there is some reason why the tribunal wouldn't have jurisdiction over that. So our starting point is always the Strata Schemes Management Act in New South Wales and those provisions that are available in the Act there to solve these kinds of disputes. Patricia saying, I'm checking out our common property memorandum in detail. Yeah, do that, Patricia, and have a read of this case, because the senior member says the information memorandum, as it's called here, and I have to go back and see, is that what it used to be called before it became the common property memorandum? And I noticed this one is from 2011. And how different is that from the common property memorandum? The senior member points out that that common property, I'm going to call it that common property memorandum, has a list of things that are lot property and the responsibility of lot owners, and a list of things that are common property and the responsibility of the owners corporation. But strictly under our legislation now, you can't add to the common property memorandum. You can only cross things out. You can only take things away. And so I've always said, I don't think it's all that helpful, really, because every building is different. What might be relevant in one building is not relevant in another. And it can cause this kind of confusion where you're just drawing from or drawing statements from these memorandums, and they don't actually match what's going on in your building, or you're being very general about it, which I think is what happened here with this bylaw. So in my view, I don't think it provides the help that a lot of owners, strata managers sometimes think it does. And your best starting point is looking at your own building, your strata plan, the legislation, and working out, even if you have to go and get some advice, it's well worth it, working out what is actually common property and what is lot property, and decide how you want to deal with that. If it makes sense to transfer responsibility for what would otherwise be common property over to lot owners, because maybe that common property is not accessible by the owners corporation. Maybe it's a particular garden area that a lot owner has the use of and no one else can access that. If you want to shift that responsibility over, great, do it, but do it properly. And that means as we're told in this decision and in the Mullins decision, that means putting together a common property rights bylaw, getting the written consent of the owner who's taking on the responsibility for looking after that area. Don't miss that step. Stan's asking, where can I find this? If that's the case, Stan, and I'm not sure, you might be replying to someone else there, Stan, the team will help you out there with a link to whatever it is that you're looking to find, whether you're looking for the case or the article. Rochelle Amina will step in there and assist you. Patricia's saying it's in our bylaws, maybe not all bylaws. I'm going to leave that one. I'll come back to it if anyone wants to give me clarity on how to help Stan. We can do that. Thank you, Emiliana, for your consent to share your story, to share your case, to put your hand up and be identified as the successful party in this case. It is often a challenge for owners who just have this feeling that something's not fair, that something's not right in their building, to go out on a limb, to be the only one standing up and saying, I don't think this was done properly, to go to the expense, to go to the emotional turmoil and effort, the time, the trouble to bring these cases. I think the assistance I gave to Amelia was way into last year, and now finally there is this decision. So it's a real commitment. And hats off to you, Amelia, and to other owners who I know make this effort for the benefit of all, for the benefit of those in your community, for the benefit of others who are here listening. You are not the only one who has had a chat to me about these absolution bylaws. I have a very vivid picture in my mind of another group of owners who I had a Zoom call with, I think either earlier this year or towards the end of last year. And I'm going to be flicking them in this case to say, this is now something that you can rely on to more confidently challenge what's happening in your building. Stan's come back to me with clarity, looking for common property memorandum. Yeah, okay. So the common property memorandum, you adopt or you don't. So it won't automatically be in your bylaws, Stan. We can swing back around and provide a link to the common property memorandum. I better do that right now if I'm that clever. I'm Googling common property memorandum, and we'll just give you a link to it. There it is. New South Wales government website. I don't think I've ever done this before. Can I post a comment on my side? Da-da-da-da. That was me. That's your common property memorandum. And it's in our New South Wales legislation that you can pass a bylaw adopting the common property memorandum. And we'll find that section for you that says that. It says something along the lines of, you can amend the common property memorandum because not all of it's going to be relevant to you, but you can only amend by taking stuff out, drawing a line through it. You can't amend by adding stuff in. So if you don't have false ceilings, so I'm looking at the memorandum now and it talks about false ceilings are the responsibility of the owner's corporation if they were installed at the time of registration of the strata plan. If you don't have any false ceilings in your building, you can remove that part of the common property memorandum and then adopt that memorandum as a bylaw. But you can't add things in, you can't change wording. And I think in some ways it can be a little bit misleading if not everything is covered in the common property memorandum. You're better off to do something bespoke for your building. Patricia saying, thanks very much, Emiliana and Amanda, for sharing. My pleasure, and I'm sure Emiliana's too. Diane saying, nor do we have one common property memorandum, only have an exclusive use of common property bylaw for one lot. Excellent. All right. Now, I have some other important information to share with you today before we wrap up. I can see your comment there, Bill and Ben. Still time for an appeal? Yes. Won't say anything further on that, but yes is the answer to that, Bill and Ben. And Patricia's saying, a salient reminder that all bylaws need to be professionally prepared. It does help. It does help. If only so you have someone to sue. is what I usually say. Things go wrong, you've got someone to sue. All right, what I wanted to talk to you about as well today is a hark back, let's say, a hark back to a podcast chat, not just a podcast chat, but a live chat that I had with an insurance expert. You will remember his name, John Trowbridge. He's been on the show here on live. It was around Christmas last year. I remember, I was talking about John's report on Christmas last year because I remember the Christmas tree behind me, his first report into insurance practices in the Strata sector. And then also, John came onto the show earlier this year. Episode number 370, I was talking to John about the affordability, availability, and competition in strata insurance in our space. And John had just released phase 3 of his report into his review of strata insurance practices. And in that chat and in that report, John talked about a guide that he had prepared wherein he was recommending certain templates that our strata managers and our strata managers should be using, and our owners should be demanding that are used to make it clearer, more transparent what it is that owners are paying for in their insurance premium, where the broker fees are, where the insurance commissions are, so that they could make more informed decisions. Now, John has reached out to me to alert me to the fact that he has now produced a really easy to read, easy to understand user guide that goes hand in hand with this handbook that he has, which includes his templates. I think I've got a copy of it here, as well as the link directly to the user guide. I am just going to head over and show you. I think I will do it this way. Oh, yeah, I've got the common property memorandum there if anyone wants to have a look at that. I've got the link to that. Okay. On John's website, he has his Strata Insurance Disclosure Handbook. So this is the one that we were talking about back in that podcast episode. And John said that he's been receiving some feedback that this handbook is, look, it's only 22 pages. I've got it here on the screen for you, but a little bit hard to digest for our owners, for our strata managers, for our committee members. And what he has done, and what you have the link to now here in the comments, is a one-page user guide, which is a reference guide for owners, committees, managers, and brokers. The handbook itself aims to give owners and committees the means to communicate effectively with their managers and brokers by giving them information and guidance to understand and monitor the services that their manager and broker are providing, and to set consistent standards while promoting best practices for strata managers. So this guide tells you how to use the handbook and how to get the most out of the templates for financial disclosures that are there in the handbook. So if you were interested in and excited by John's recommendations, his review, and the practices that he was recommending to be more transparent with our insurance disclosures, and if you've had a look at his handbook, what I am recommending to you today is grab this user guide as well, and that's going to help you and or your strata manager make better use of that handbook and the templates that are in there. We've got our links there in our comments to be able to access each of those. Yes, that's right. There was something else in my head that I wanted to add. Apparently, Strata Community Association is getting on board. John's told me getting on board with the templates and the recommendations that he has set out in his handbook, and it is going to put out its own practice guide before the end of this year, 2023. So that's going to be quite similar to what you see with John's guide and in John's handbook. So getting started with implementing these practices, whether as a strata manager with your communities, with your clients, or as a committee member saying, hey, strata manager, this is how we want to, these are the templates that we want to use when we're going to our AGMs and we're trying to explain to owners how all these costs are made up. Really good idea to be getting on the front foot now because it looks like that's where what SCA will be recommending as well. So, links to those resources here in the chat. I will press this button here and I'm back with you. Uh, some secret talk going on there in the chat. I'm going to leave that one up to Emiliana to deal with. Emiliana is saying, please keep on tuning into YSP. There's more madness to hear and to learn from our strata plan. Okay, I wasn't sure if you're just talking about the madness generally that we talk about here on the Your Strata Property platforms, Emiliana. But yeah, keep us posted with what comes next, especially if it's something that we can all be learning from. Bill and Ben is saying, I've seen a few lawyer drafted bylaws shot down at NCAT, big name strata lawyers in some cases. Choose ones professionally, carefully. So yes, I think that's in answer to Patricia's comment that all bylaws need to be professionally prepared. Well, you heard what I had to say there, Bill and Ben. Even if they do go wrong, you've got someone there to sue if you have had your bylaw professionally prepared. Oh, and there's our link to John's resources. Okay. Leonie says, great story, Amanda. Thank you, Leonie. As I said, I am here to deliver what it is that you need. So I get inspired by you sharing your stories. And also when you tell me, Amanda, we learn from cases. So do I. I'm not surprised. I am always on the lookout for more and more interesting and more helpful cases to bring to you. So when Emiliana's dropped into my lap this week, I said to Emiliana, please, can we talk about this on Friday Live? So thank you once again for being so generous with your sharing. That's taken us up just about to 5 o'clock. I'm going to take my jet lag and I've had a bit of a sore throat as well because, you get the plane flu, of course. And I had my hot cup of tea here ready to go. And now it's gone cold because I haven't stopped talking to take a drink. I'm going to go refill that. I'm going to wish you all a very happy, healthy, restful, jet lag free weekend and catch you all same time, same place. Something's happening next Friday and I can't remember what it is. Oh, I know. I am going to be in committee meeting with the Australian College of Strata Lawyers. We're getting together in Sydney to do some strategic planning. So I don't know what stage that's going to be at or even exactly where I'm going to be next Friday, but I'll drop in, maybe have some fellow strata lawyers hiding away from poorly drafted bylaws, fellow strata lawyers around to say hello to you all. Have a fabulous weekend. Thanks again for joining me. Catch you all next time. Bye.